Why are we involving ourselves in a country on Russia's doorstep? That makes no sense at all. The best that we can do is try to alleviate the suffering. You know, Ukraine is a big graveyard. That's all it is. That's a dead country now. Just within the last 48 hours, the Russians have surrendered a total of 10,000 Ukrainian troops. I think 5,000 in one area, 5,000 in another, and the Russians sent a message to them: surrender or you will be annihilated. And Zelensky ordered them to fight. They haven't got a snowball's chance in hell. Ukrainian military is decimated. Most of our technology did not perform to expectation. We wasted lives. The great men of NATO, the leading generals who gave all the wonderful advice, primarily American and British, to execute a. Why are we involving ourselves in a 0-3 country on Russia's doorstep? That makes no sense at all. The best that we can do is try to alleviate the suffering. You know, Ukraine is a big graveyard. That's all it is. That's a dead country now. Just within the last 48 hours, the Russians have surrendered a total of 10,000 Ukrainian troops. I think 5,000 in one area, 5,000 in another, and the Russians sent a message to them: surrender or you will be annihilated. And Zelensky ordered them 35 to fight. They haven't got a snowball's chance in hell. Ukrainian military is decimated. Most of our technology did not perform to expectation. 48, we wasted lives. The great men of NATO, the leading generals who gave all the wonderful advice, primarily American and British, Israel is finished, to execute a series of offensives that bled Ukraine white. Ukraine is fini. Why are we involving ourselves in a country on Russia's doorstep? That makes no sense at all. The best that we can do is try to alleviate the suffering. You know, Ukraine is a big graveyard. That's all it is. That's a dead country now. Just within the last 48 hours, the Russians have surrendered a total of 10,000 Ukrainian troops. I think 5,000 in one area, 5,000 in another. And the Russians sent a message to them: surrender or you will be annihilated. And Zelensky ordered them to fight. They haven't got a snowball's chance in hell. Ukrainian military is decimated. Most of our technology did not perform to expectation. We wasted lives. The great men of NATO, the leading generals, who gave all the wonderful advice, primarily American and British, to execute a series of offensives that bled Ukraine white. Ukraine is fini. Is the reality 1.50? Everyone keeps dodging. We involved 1.7 ourselves in a war sitting on Russia's 1.9 doorstep, then acted surprised when it 1.12 collapsed under its own weight. 10,000 1.14 troops surrendering isn't a tactic. It's 1.17 a sign of a military that's done. 1.19 Western generals promised breakthroughs, but their plans only drained Ukraine 1.23 dry. The truth is simple. Ukraine is 1.26 finished militarily, and pretending 1.28 otherwise is just extending the 1.30 suffering. And right now, I think we have probably 1.35 a drama queen republic if we can keep 1.40. Everything is theater. It's 1.42 unending, 1.44, and President Trump seems to love this 1.46 sort of thing. But the theater is 1.48 confusing. It sends people in the wrong directions. This is especially true in 1.52 Moscow. You know, the Russians are very serious people. They take what's happening on their borders very seriously. That's why we have a war. So they don't understand Trump. He suddenly expresses a willingness to meet, but then his sort of staff backtracks and says, well, we've got to go back to a ceasefire. When he realized there would be no ceasefire until we had some sort of agreement hammered out. What he's really saying is that Washington has turned foreign policy into performance art, and Trump leans into that chaos. But the problem is simple. Theater might work in American politics. It doesn't work on the world stage, especially not with Russia. They're literal, serious, and expect consistency. So when Trump signals he wants talks and his own team immediately walks it back, it looks like confusion, not strategy. And in geopolitics, mixed signals, wars start, and how peace slips away. So 254, he calls up and says, "I'm not coming." 256, the Russians interpret that as 258, potentially threatening. Then he, 301, imposes more sanctions. Again, more 303 threats. Although these sanctions, 305, frankly don't amount to a tinker's dam. 308. But having said that, simultaneously, 310, he's withdrawing U.S. forces from Romania, 313, and Bulgaria. And I expect he'll withdraw the forces in Poland and 318, probably Lithuania and elsewhere. Why? Because we're not postured to fight the 13 Russians. No one in the United States, 326, has any interest in a war with Russia. I, 329, think we have a lot of saber rattling at 330, the moment in Eastern Europe. That will 332 probably continue. But if you're anything like Russia, you will listen to this. You're trying to figure out, what does this man want? He's 338 pulling forces out, but he's still 340 threatens. He says he wants an agreement, but he goes back to this 344 ceasefire. And when we say no for the 346 99th time until we have an agreement, he 349 imposes more sanctions. This is a huge problem. You're asking the right question, but there's no easy answer, 356, because we have no coherent national 401 security strategy. 402 from Russia's view, this looks 404 completely erratic. Threats one moment, 407 troop withdrawals the next. It's not strategy, it's confusion. And when a 412 superpower sends mixed signals, it becomes dangerous fast. The real issue 418 is simple. America has no clear plan. 421, and everyone else can see it. 423, none. Everything is impulse-driven. So 427, when you turn to the Middle East, what's 429 the policy? Well, the policy is that 431, we're going to do whatever Israel wants. 433, us to do. It's very interesting to me that this 438 woman Machado, who's been named as the 442 possible successor to Maduro if we 446 succeed with regime change in Venezuela. 450, she's the new Nobel Peace Prize winner. 452, she immediately says, if I'm the president, if I take over, we will move 458, our embassy to Jerusalem. 501. This is the problem with impulse-based 503 foreign policy. It bleeds into every region. In the Middle East, there's no real strategy, just automatic alignment 510 with whatever Israel wants. And when 512, even a potential leader in Venezuela, 514 signals loyalty to Washington, by 516, promising to move her embassy to 518 Jerusalem, it shows how warped the 520 incentives have become. It's not diplomacy. It's political signaling 525 dressed up as policy. 528. Why would somebody in Venezuela 531 give a damn where the embassy was, in 534 Israel? I think she knows where the 537 power, audience that she's playing to. So that 542 kind of informs us as to where we're 545 likely to go in the Middle East. And 546, when we say likely to go, it's wherever 548 Israel wants us to go. And I think the 551 Emirates understand that. I think Qatar 554 understands it. I know Kuwait does. I-56 think Saudi Arabia understands it. 558 doesn't mean they like it, but they know it. 602, and talking about Venezuela's situation, 605, I mean a aircraft carrier there is. 608, that's a pretty big show of force. Does 610 it worry you what's going on down there? 612 right now? 614, well, it does, but perhaps not for the 616 reasons that the administration would 618 say. You know, we've been listening to 621, this drug war rhetoric now, for a very 624 long time. It's becoming increasingly difficult for many of us to take it 628 seriously. When you have an organization, 630, like the CIA that is well known for 634, it's info. Optics, not policy. 729. We have a great deal of difficulty 731 dealing with that. That's why I had 733 recommended a long time ago to the 734 president. We need to put the military 736 on the border and put it under military 738 control. And then rotate battalions on 740 and off until the place is secure. 743, because you can't compete with the flood, 745 of money that cultivates corruption. 748, that's a huge problem. It's a huge 750 problem inside the United States. So 752, right now the drug cartels can continue 756 to do a lot of damage to us, regardless 758 of what we do to Venezuela. I'll be 800, Frank. All they need at the moment is a van with a map of the Interstate Highway 86 to deliver their human or drug 89 packages wherever they are sending. 810 them for money. That's the problem. I 813 don't think this is going to solve that. 815, but what it will do, and this is 818, something I'm very concerned about, is optics, not policy. 729. We have a great deal of difficulty, 731 dealing with that. That's why I had 733 recommended a long time ago to the 734 president. We need to put the military 736 on the border and put it under military 738 control, and then rotate battalions on and off until the place is secure, because you can't compete with the flood, 745 of money that cultivates corruption. 748, that's a huge problem. It's a huge 750 problem inside the United States. So, 752 right now, the drug cartels can continue 756 to do a lot of damage to us, regardless 758 of what we do to Venezuela. I'll be frank. All they need at the moment is a van with a map of the Interstate Highway 806 to deliver their human or drug 809 packages wherever they are sending, 810 them for money. That's the problem. I 813 don't think any of this is going to solve that, but what it will do, and this is 18 something I'm very concerned about, is it will once again remind the Latin 823 American republics and peoples down 825 there of just how threatening we are. 828. Because we have a long track record of 830 intervention down there, whether it's L-832 Salvador or Nicaragua, 834, you name it. We've been in 837 and out of these places. And I'm already 839 hearing people say, well, this will be 841 like Panama, just like Noriega. His point is blunt. The real threat, 846, isn't Venezuela. It's the Cartel 848 pipeline flowing straight through our 850 own border. And no amount of foreign 853 intervention fixes that. Sending 855 carriers south only reinforces the old 858 image of America meddling in Latin America. Something those countries 801 haven't forgotten. Meanwhile, cartels 904 don't need warships to beat us. Just a 906 van, a highway, and a corrupt 908 checkpoint. Well, Noriega was removed. I don't think 913 that ended drug trafficking. I don't see any evidence for that. Has 917 it suppressed it? I'm sure somewhat. But 919, there are always other ways to engage in 922 this criminality. So the idea should be 925, you stop it at the border, and you stop 928 it in your coastal waters. If you can't 930 do that, then you have to enforce Law 932 inside the United States. And you're not going to get very far unless you are harsh. And the man who demonstrated just 40 how effective this is was Lee Kuan Yew in 943 Singapore. If you come into Singapore 946 and you are peddling drugs, you will face the death penalty. Sure, you'll go 950 to trial, you'll have a jury trial, but 954, that's what you're facing if you 956 do this. And you know, Mao used to say 958 all the time to his party members. Shoot 1001, educate a million. You never have 1003 to execute very many people to get the 10-5 point across. It comes across pretty 10-5 quick. But inside, well, how humane is it for hundreds of thousands of Americans to die of fentanyl? Somehow or another, you don't want to find the individuals who are responsible for distributing it and punishing them, even if it involves capital punishment. If you're trying to save them, that's what you have to do. What he's really saying is that removing foreign leaders never stops the drug flow. It just shifts the routes. The real fight is at the border and inside the country. And if you can't control those, foreign interventions won't matter. His comparison to Singapore makes the point: harsh penalties create deterrence. In the US, we call that inhumane. But letting fentanyl kill hundreds of thousands is somehow acceptable. It's a hard argument, but it forces a simple question. If you want to save lives, how far are you willing to go? Venezuela, on the European landmass, in 1106 covers the area of Germany, France, Belgium, Switzerland, and part of Austria. You know, has a 1,700-mile coastline. 1,379 miles it shares with Brazil. 1,380 miles it shares with Colombia. And we 1125 already know there are paramilitary 1127 organizations in Colombia, as many as 1129, 100,000, and also in Brazil, who are just anxious as hell to go into Venezuela and fight the Yankees. What are we accomplishing? Macgregor's point, 1142, is clear. Invading or bombing countries 1144 in Latin America would backfire 1146 instantly. Venezuela is massive, 1149, surrounded by armed groups ready to 1151 resist, and the region still remembers 1152 past U.S. interventions. Any military move 1155 there wouldn't solve a problem. It would 1157 start a regional war. We don't need. And 12 remember that just a few weeks ago, in 1201, fact, just L. admitted in the Oval Office in a 1205 interview that Maduro had approached him 1208 and offered him a stake in the oil and 1210 gas industries. In fact, President Trump 1212 said he's offered everything. And the 1215 question was, well, is that not enough? 1216. No, that's not enough. What? How often has regime change worked? How 1224 often has it benefited us? I think the 1227 answer is not much. It's very expensive. 1230. If we go into Venezuela, we remove the 1232 government, try to install a new one. 1234. There are people who will support it. 1236. But there are a lot of people who will fight it. So what are we cultivating? A 1240 civil war. And then, do we make 1242 Venezuela dependent upon us? What a 1246 disaster. You know, how many trillions have we lost in the Middle East? What 1250 did it cost us in Vietnam? We went off 1252, the gold standard in 1977, 72. Why? Because we were broke. Macgregor's point is simple. Even with Maduro offering oil access, Washington 1303 still wants regime change. A strategy 1305 that rarely works and usually ends in 1307 civil war. We've already wasted 1309 trillions on failed interventions. doing 1312 it again in Venezuela would just repeat 1314 the same expensive mistake. 1317. So this doesn't make any sense, but it's more of this sort of crazy drama queen behavior. And you get these 1325 same, worn-out arguments from people 1328 in Washington. 1330, who aren't even qualified to run a 1332 Burger King. And at the same time, what 1335 are they doing? They're advising on 1336 national brain surgery. This is 1339 ridiculous. We don't have a group of 1341 professionals, people that really 1343 understand anything, rooted in foreign 1345 policy, rooted in all the various 1347 areas of policy that are important to. 70% of American families live paycheck to paycheck. How can this go on? This can't. Colonel, does classifying the cartels as terrorist organizations, does that accomplish anything? That's a good question. Legally, I suppose in some ways it does. I'm someone who always felt strongly, if we were serious about this, we would effectively declare war on the cartels. But that war should be fought on our borders and inside our country, not overseas. And see, my concern is this, is another exercise in diverting everybody's attention into something that's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be damaging to us. And, while at the same time at home, what are 1438 we doing? Yeah, nothing. You know, as long as you have the cost of groceries rising and 44 high inflation, as long as you continue to print money without restraint. 49. Macgregor's point here is blunt. 1451. Washington is full of people unqualified. 1453. For the jobs they're making life and 1455 death decisions about. While Americans 1457 struggle paycheck to paycheck, the same clueless voices keep pushing dramatic 1502 expensive ideas that solve nothing. 1505. Labeling cartels as terrorists sounds tough, but he sees it as another 1509 distraction. The real fight is at home. 1511, the border, corruption, inflation. Yet 1514, that's exactly where nothing is being 1515 done. Ultimately, what you do is you 1518 make long-term strategy, planning, and 1521 manufacturing, industry, science, 1523 technology, education, impossible. How complex do you do the military? I keep trying to tell 1531 people, if you exercise 1533 restraint, back away, shed these 1536 overseas commitments, and focus on the 1538 military over the next 10 years, with a 1542 strategy that is designed to adapt us to 1545, a new world, new 1547 technology, new societies. If 1549 you'll exercise that restraint, you'll 1552 have a lot of capability in 10 years, 1554 that'll put you far ahead of everyone, 1556 else. We won't do it. We're always back 1559 in there using what we have over and over. 1602 over and over again. And you've got 1604 families inside the military that are on 1606 food stamps. You can't 1609, they can't feed themselves. They're not paid enough. And everybody says, well, 1612, the military's paid too much. Well, we 1614 have to look at where the distribution, 1615 of funds, goes in the military, and it doesn't go to the families of serf. At the lowest level, that have to man the 1621 ships that man the equipment that 1623 continuously deploy. So we got a lot of 1626 problems, but no one really wants to 1628 address them. Macgregor's point is straightforward. 1631, constant foreign adventures make real 1632 long-term planning impossible. If 1635, America stepped back, showed restraint, 1637, and rebuilt for the next decade, its 1639 could regain serious strength. But 1641, instead, we burned through the same 1643 equipment the same troops, and the same 1645 budgets over and over. Meanwhile, 1648 military families are literally on food, 1650 stamps, while billions vanish into 1652 bureaucracy. The problem isn't that we 1654 spend too little. It's that we spend on 1656 everything except what actually matters. 1658, we have a problem right now because 1701, President Trump, whether he likes it or 1702 not, is a lightning rod for many, many issues, even things absolutely not responsible. So he's 1712 and an easy person to point to mobilize 1715 discontent and hatred. And remember, 1717, you've got a lot of people out there. 1719, Soros is one of many, but people out there who are willing to fund Antifa, or 1725, fund anybody who is anti-Trump, 1729, and resist the federal law, you know. And if you don't enforce federal 1733 law, you don't have a country, you know. 1736, we had a dispute over that in 1861, 1740, and it was brutal. We settled it. If you're not going to enforce 1745 federal law, you have a choice. You can 1746, change it, or you can impose it. Now, 1750, Trump wants to impose it. I happen to agree with him. 1753. Macgregor's point here is that Trump has 1755 become a symbol by some, hated by 1758 others, and that makes him the easiest 18 target to rally anger around, even for 1803 things he didn't cause. And when groups are being openly funded to resist 1807 federal authority, it tests whether a 1810 country can even function. His message is simple. If federal law isn't 1814 enforced, you either change it or you 1817 collapse. And on that, he sides with 1819 Trump's instinct to enforce it. 1822, we're moving into a different world now. 1824, where you're going to end up with a 1825 divergence between the United States and 1828, Europe and the rest of the world. 1832, simply because BRICS is growing, and 1835 building a parallel financial system. 1838, right? Along with parallel institutions. Now, 1841, we all said just 5-10 years ago, sitting 1843 here in the United States, because I sat 1845 around and listened to people in the 1846 government say it. Well, this is true. 1848, but they'll never get there very fast. You know, we'll be king of everything for at least 2 more decades, maybe more. They can't threaten the dollar. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone is now saying, wow, look how far they have come. Now, the Japanese, or excuse me, the Chinese will tell you flat out, our banking system is not nearly as sophisticated as yours. So it's going to take a lot longer to get there, and they admit that. But it's clear they're working on it, and they're doing very well. They have the equivalent of the SWIFT system that is actually easier to use and easier to exploit for cross-border purchases and transfers than our own SWIFT system. So we're moving into this new world, and gold is at the center of it for the rest of the world. I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, some people talk about Bitcoin or something else. I have. Rest of the world, they're moving increasingly in this direction of gold. So, we have to take that into consideration. This is not I have a bigger army than you do. This is not, I have a bigger air force than you do. And this is the final point. We don't seem to understand that economic prosperity and strength are the foundation for military power. Macgregor's warning here is simple. The world is shifting, and BRICS is building a parallel financial system faster than Washington ever expected. The dollar's dominance is no longer guaranteed, and countries are quietly moving toward gold-backed stability, while the U.S. keeps relying on military power instead of economic strength. But in the modern world, Armies don't decide influence. Economies do. And that's the part America still isn't grasping. And we're? Prosperity and production and strength. 2035 side of the equation right now. We don't understand that that's what made us so powerful during and after World War II. You know, our greatest period of 2044 expansion as a scientific industrial power came between 1920, 2049, and 1970. Now, why is that important? Well, it's 2054 important because we had almost no 2056 immigration. We shut it down. We had 2059 something called the Exceptional 2101 Skills Act that was designed to bring 2104 people in who were exceptional, who could 2107 immediately assimilate and make 2108 important contributions. By the way, that's how Einstein came into the United 2113 states. But otherwise, we shut it down. We assimilated the people that were 2118 there, and all of the inventions that had 2120 been devised in the previous century, and 2123, the first part of the 20th century, were 2124 assimilated. So suddenly we go 2128 down the list. It's endless. Nylon. Take 2132 your pick. We went 2135 from a world where most people grew up 2137 on a farm with an outhouse to a world 2140 where we had central heating, 2143 indoor plumbing. Our whole standard of 2145 living skyrocketed. 2147, and the building of the manufacturing process that just expanded overnight, 2152 during World War II, was then rapidly, 2154, transformed into commercial 2157 use. 2158. We deliberately did that because we, 2201, didn't want, as Eisenhower put it, the 2204, large, military-industrial complex. 2206, that's why you warned against it. And he, 2208, was instrumental in keeping military spending down and working to find ways 2214 to get along at the time with the Soviet 2216 Union. Now today, nobody mentions that 2219 anymore, but Eisenhower understood what 2222 war really meant. It meant that it 2224 disrupted, benefit from it. Fortunately, he knew 2231 that would not necessarily be the truth, 2233 in the future, and that at some point we, 2236, could become a target if we were stupid, 2238, and we've been very stupid since 1965, 2242. And I think right now we're in a very dangerous place. Most Americans don't get it. They don't understand it. But we are. 2250. Macgregor's warning here is simple. The 2252 world is shifting and BRICS is building 2254, a parallel financial system, faster than 2257 Washington ever expected. The dollar's dominance is no longer guaranteed, and the 2301 countries are quietly moving toward gold-backed stability, while the U.S. keeps 2306 relying on military power instead of 2308 economic strength. But in the modern 2310 world, armies don't decide influence, 2312 economies do. And that's the part 2314 America still isn't grasping.